Welcome to the story of the Watcher's Mansion. Are you brave enough to step inside?
When Eric and his wife Sarah inherited an old Victorian mansion from a distant relative, they thought their luck had finally turned. They'd been drowning in debt and barely making ends meet, but now they had a home, free of charge. The mansion was breathtaking yet unnerving. Its sharp spires, weathered stone, and towering windows gave it an imposing presence. A thick forest surrounded the property, casting shadows that seemed to move with the wind. Despite its eerie appearance, Eric was thrilled. "It's just old," he reassured Sarah, as they stood before the looming house. Their first night was uneventful, though the creaks and groans of the house made it difficult to sleep. Sarah kept waking up, convinced she heard someone walking in the hallway. But when Eric checked, there was no one there. As they settled in, Eric became fixated on exploring every inch of the house. The library was his favorite, a sprawling room filled with dusty, leather-bound books. One book, thicker than the rest, caught his attention. It was a ledger cataloguing the house's history. Most entries were mundane, records of repairs, purchases, and staff wages, but one section was blacked out entirely, with the words "Do not open" scribbled in the margins. In the basement, Eric discovered a locked door. Unlike the rest of the house, this door was reinforced with iron and bolted shut. It didn't match the grandeur of the mansion. It looked like something meant to keep something in rather than out. That night, the noises started again. Faint whispers, muffled footsteps, and the sensation of being watched. Eric decided to return to the locked door. This time, it was ajar. Behind the door was a spiral staircase that descended deep into the earth, far deeper than the house's foundations should allow. Eric carried a flashlight, its weak beam barely cutting through the darkness. At the bottom, he found a room unlike anything he'd ever seen. The walls were covered in strange symbols carved into the stone, glowing faintly. In the center of the room was a wooden chair with leather restraints, as if meant to hold someone down. Around it lay a circle of blackened candles melted to the floor. Eric felt a sudden chill, as if the room itself were alive. He heard faint breathing, though he was alone. Panicking, he ran back upstairs, slamming the door shut behind him. The next day, Sarah explored the attic, hoping to distract herself from the growing unease. Among the cobwebs and forgotten trunks, she found a leather-bound diary. It belonged to Victor Hargrave, the mansion's previous owner. The diary detailed Victor's obsession with the Watcher, a mysterious entity he claimed lived within the house. He wrote about conducting experiments to summon it, believing it could grant unimaginable power. "The Watcher is always watching," Victor wrote. "It sees through time. It sees through us, but it must never be unleashed." The final entry chilled Sarah. "The house is its prison, but the prison is failing. If you find this, leave. It is too late for me." Sarah showed Eric the diary, but he dismissed it as the ramblings of a madman. That night, the house grew colder and the whispers turned into guttural voices. Mirrors in the house no longer reflected their surroundings. Instead, they showed shadowy figures moving in the distance. One night, Sarah woke to find Eric gone. She searched the house, her flashlight flickering as she moved. She found him standing in front of the locked door, his eyes glazed over. He mumbled incoherently, "It's watching. It knows." The door opened on its own, revealing the staircase again. This time, Sarah saw movement in the darkness below, shadows shifting and writhing. Desperate for answers, Sarah returned to Victor's diary and found a hidden compartment. Inside was a map of the house with the words "Heart of the Watcher" scrawled over the basement room. A note read, "Destroy the chair. Break the circle, only then can it be silenced." Armed with the diary and a sledgehammer, Sarah and Eric descended into the basement together. The air grew heavier with each step, the walls seeming to pulse like a heartbeat. When they reached the room, the chair was no longer empty. A figure sat in it, tall, gaunt, and faceless. It rose as they entered, its hollow voice echoing, "You cannot break what binds you to me." Eric, shaking with fear, swung the sledgehammer at the chair. The moment it shattered, the symbols on the walls blazed with light, and the figure screamed, a sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The room began to collapse, the ground splitting open to reveal an endless void. As the couple fled, Sarah tripped. The void's pull grew stronger, dragging her toward its edge. Eric grabbed her hand, but the force was too much. "Go!" she screamed, letting go. Eric barely escaped as the house crumbled behind him, consumed by the earth. Months later, Eric moved to a small apartment in the city, trying to forget the nightmare. One night, he noticed his bathroom mirror flicker. For a moment, he swore he saw Sarah staring back at him, her eyes glowing faintly. And then the whispers began again.